A son's first hero is his father. Do you agree? I know you would agree. Hi and welcome. Students, if there is any work, would your father allow you to do that work, or he himself would do it? I know he would never allow you to do that work, and he himself would do that particular work. Yes, right? In this video, you are going to learn about a story of your father and a son, which will enlighten us that the father's love is unconditional and incomparable. This story teaches us how a son should behave with his father, and finally we would realize that there is no love on this earth which is greater than that of a love of a father for his son. And also this story gives a scope to introspect oneself, to analyze what kind of a son he is. And this video is all about 10th class English Unit 3 Reading A. Shall we start? But before we start, I'd be really very happy if you please click on the subscription bell, like buttons, and do share the video so that I can come up with such kind of videos in the future. And if you're ready, let's start. Welcome back. This is the 10th class English textbook cover page prescribed by Telangana government, and in this video we are going to talk about Unit 3, and this is the cover page of Unit 3, and the title of the Unit 3, that is the theme of the Unit 3, is human relations, and it includes 3 readings, that is 3 chapters. Reading A, that is chapter 1, the journey. Reading B, that is chapter 2, another woman. Reading C, that is chapter 3, the never ness. And in this video we are going to talk about reading A, that is chapter 1, the journey. The journey story is all about a father and a son, and this story talks about the relation between a father and a son, how a son treats his father and how a father treats his son. Let us try to read the lesson and understand the broader love of a father. But before we read and understand the lesson, this lesson was written by the author Ashe Dorji Thongsi. Let us try to know something about this great Indian author. Yeah, he is Mr. Ashe Dorji Thongsi, and he has received many awards, and he also received a greatest honorary award of Padma Shri and Sahitya Akademi Awards, and he is a greatest poet of Indian English literature. Let's try to know something more about this great personality. Ashe Dorji Thongsi is a famous name in Assami literature, and he was born very poor. He was born in May 1952 near a village Arunachal Pradesh. Though he was born very poor and grew up in poverty, he studied very well and entered the Arunachal Pradesh Civil Services, and later he was promoted to the IAS, Indian Administrative Services. He writes fiction, drama, essays in Assami as well as English. He received a national recognition for his famous novel Mauna Aunt Muktar Hurday, and this novel brought him the Sahitya Akademi also in 2005. Many of the Thongsi's novels, including Sonam, deals with the cultural life of the Mompa and Sherdukpen tribes of Arunachal Pradesh. Ashe Dorji Thongsi brought lot of name and fame to Indian literature, and now let us try to read the lesson and try to understand it in a clear manner. But before we read the lesson, let's just try to understand the title, the journey. Journey by default is going from one place to other place. That is the simplest meaning that we can consider, and let us try to understand in the lesson where the father and the son are really going, and do they really want to go, or is it a forced journey or a willing journey? Let us try to know about this in a detailed manner. After spending a leisurely Sunday at home, the very thought of returning to work on Monday is tiring. Lethargy creeps in if the holiday continues over an extended period. That is how I felt when I was preparing to return to my place of work after spending 6 months at home. The fact that I was to leave behind my newly wed wife and go to a far off place did not help either. Obviously, I did not want to go. And this is the first paragraph. Lethargy means laziness, not having the energy. Creeps means develops, improves, and obviously means very clearly. In the first paragraph, he is clearly telling that he spent 6 months at home because he took some kind of holiday vacation and he came home on a purpose. He spent 6 months, and this day he had to leave this place and he has to go to his working place, and which he doesn't want to go because he doesn't want to leave his newly married wife. This is a condition, and normally this is a situation even after Sunday. If you want to go to school on Monday, most of you don't like to go, right? So in the first paragraph we can understand he doesn't want to go to work. He is not willing to go to his working place because he married newly and he doesn't want to leave his wife. Finally he says, I don't want to go. And let's continue. However, I finally did decide to go. I did not have much to carry by way of luggage, just a trunk. Ours is a hilly terrain without any motorable roads, and there is no certainty that we are ever going to have any roads. In any case, while coming home, we do not carry bedding. Besides, I had to come home this time round for a special purpose, to get married. My parents had arranged my marriage according to the customs of our tribal society. Time flew, and 5 months into my marriage, I realized it. Initially, I thought of extending my leave, even taking unpaid leave. But after some dilly-dallying, I finally decided against it because marriage had increased my responsibilities and I had to go into debt. So in the second paragraph, the author is telling that he did not want to go, but finally he decided to go. There are reasons to go because he took long leave, and if he want to continue, and that leave will become unpaid without salary, he had to take the leave. That is the first thing. And the second thing is because he was married, he was into a debt, dues. He borrowed a lot of money from others. So if he want to pay back, he had to work. Then only he can get salary, then only he can pay all the debts. That is the second thing. And these two are the reasons why he wanted to go to his workplace. And the most important thing is, since he belonged to a tribal society, they live in a hilly areas and where the roads are not good at all. They cannot travel in a proper manner. There are no transport facilities. If they really want to go to the towns, they have to walk from their village to the road where there is a bus facility. So when he came, he brought a trunk box. Trunk is nothing but a box, and he had to carry that box. So in the second paragraph, the author says he visited his house with a purpose to get married, and that was completed, but that marriage brought him lot of debts and he had to clear them. But he decided, not simply decided, after some dilly-dallying. What is dilly-dallying? Taking lot of time to decide something. After some kind of thought process, we take some decision, that is dilly-dallying. And finally he decided to go to his workplace because marriage brought him a lot of responsibilities, and the second thing is he had to pay back the debts. So let's continue. On my way home from the bus stop, my trunk had been carried by a porter. The problem now was we couldn't find anyone who could help me carry the trunk to the bus stop. At another time of the year, we would have easily found someone to help me. But now most of the villagers were busy in the fields. Nobody had time to spare for me. In fact, carrying the trunk should not have been such a worry for me, except that my education had made me shun physical labor. After all, I was a government officer, and the idea of people seeing me carry my own luggage was not at all amusing. Otherwise, for a young man like me, it should not have been an issue to carry a 20-kilo chest on my back. Porter is nothing but a worker, a laborer. Shun means to avoid doing something. Chest means a trunk box. So when the author came to his village 5 months ago, he brought a box. At that time there were no works, so at that time workers were available. One of the worker brought his box from his bus stop to the house. But now when he wanted to go back to the work, there were no workers available because all the workers are busy in their own works. So no worker was available to carry his own trunk. And the author says the trunk box weight is only 20 kilos. It's very easy for him to carry because he is physically very fit to carry, but because of his education he never carried any weights. All because of his education he never did any kind of such kind of carrying heavy weights, so he was not used to carry that. That is the first thing. And the second thing, if he carries, being a government officer, if he carries his own luggage, what would other people think? And that is the second reason. He thinks carrying his own luggage, being a government officer, is not good, and that is what he thinks about carrying his own luggage. Otherwise, carrying 20 kgs of luggage box is very easy for the author, but two things made him to avoid carrying. The first thing is he feels that he is an educated person, that is not good to carry. The second thing is that what would people think if he carries his own box? And then what happened? Who carried? No worker is available to carry, and he is not willing to carry. Let's see who would carry his trunk. Let's continue with the next paragraph. Finally, my father came up with a solution. Don't worry, I myself will see you off at Dirang. I protested. How could I allow my old father to carry my trunk? What would people think? What would they say? But I failed to dissuade him. It was decided that father would carry the chest. Dissuade is nothing but convincing somebody, and you can see the trunk box here. And finally, what father came up with a solution? Father told, I will carry. And now the author is thinking the father is old, and what would other people think if he allowed his father to carry the trunk box? And this is a thought, and the author told, no father, you should not carry. But he could not convince his own father, and finally it was decided that father would carry the trunk box. And now father carries the trunk box and son walks. And the next paragraph is, a large crowd gathered at our place the day I was to leave. People had come to wish me luck. It was 10:20 when I left for Dirang. My father had already left. As I had to do a bit of catching up, I walked fast. 3 kilometers down the road, I caught up with my father. Father said, you are late. Would you like to rest for some time? So finally all the villagers came to give send off to the son, and he is going to his workplace today, and all of them said goodbye, and father left before because he had to carry the trunk box. Before the son, father left taking the trunk box, and later the son walked very fast for some time, 3 kilometers, and finally he caught up with the father. And when father saw his own son was very tired, he told, dear son, do you want to take some rest? Then what happened? Let's try to understand from the next paragraph. Having walked fast, I was tired. Moreover, I had to cross 2 hills on the way up to the spot. I quickly sat down on the rock. My father laughed at my plight. So this little distance has tired you? Rest for a while. But we have to be in time for the bus. Since the author walked very fast to catch his father and he was very tired, so father was laughing at his own son, and they rested under a tree. And they sat under a tree and they took rest, and father told his son, so this is a little distance, and even then also you are so tired, my dear son, but so we have to walk fast because we have to be in time to catch up the bus. So they both sat under a shade of a tree and they took some rest. And then the next paragraph is, father was quiet for some time. He thoughtfully looked at the son for a moment, and then his eyes fell on the can of homemade wine that I was carrying. Wetting his lips with his tongue, he said, in a matter of fact, I am thirsty. So father looked at the son. It was a hot sun and he was thirsty, it seems, and the son was carrying a small can which has homemade wine, and father said, after looking at the can, I am really thirsty. Then what happened? When the father said that I am thirsty, what happened? Let's try to understand. The next paragraph is, I gave him a can of the wine. He poured himself a mug and handed me the can. He drank all of it at one go. He then arranged the belt that was attached to the trunk carefully on his forehead. So this was the picture. My father carrying my luggage on his back and me following him with a tiny bag in my hand. We were walking up a narrow hilly road, and neither of us uttered a word, as if we were strangers who spoke different languages. So when the father said, I am thirsty, he gave the can, and father poured some wine in a mug and he drank and gave back to the can to his son. And later he took the trunk box and he kept the trunk box on his head, and father carrying the trunk box and walking, and the son following his father with a small can in his hand. And there were so many thoughts which were going on in the mind of his son, but father never uttered a single word. Even the son also never uttered a single word, because they never spoke to each other. They were walking as if they were very new strangers, as if they don't know each other and as if they don't know each other's language. So they started walking in a narrow hilly path. The path is not good at all. The road is not good at all, not in a good condition. And then what happened? Let's try to understand from the next paragraph. And the next paragraph is, I did not know what was going in his mind. From time to time, it crossed my mind that it was improper for me to let father carry the luggage. I wanted to tell him that I would like to carry the trunk myself, but my guilt and shame did not allow me to do so. This self-consciousness had probably to do with my education, the white-collar job that I had, or quite simply my pride. Sometimes I had the feeling that if I carried the luggage, my father and my people, in fact the whole world, would laugh at me and I would be belittled. Guilt means some kind of blame. If you do some mistake, you feel guilty of it. Self-consciousness is nothing but feeling of nervousness, what other people think about you. White collar job is nothing but any official job. So in this paragraph, the author says that he doesn't know what his father really thinks, but he had lot of thoughts in his mind, and he wanted to say to his father that, Father, I want to carry that trunk, but he never said, because he was guilty of saying it, and his guiltiness is because of his education, or because of his white collar job, or because of his thought process, what other people, what entire world would think if he really carries his own trunk. And he thinks that everybody would laugh and he will be belittled. Belittled means insulted. Belittled means looked down upon. And if he really carries his own trunk, he thinks that other people will look down upon him. And that is the reason. So he had the thought of saying to his father that, Father, I would carry the trunk. He never shared his feeling of carrying the trunk on his own, because he thinks he is a government officer, very educated, and because he thinks that all other people would laugh at him if he really carries the trunk. So finally, he never told his father that he would carry the trunk. So father is carrying the trunk and he is simply following his father with a small can in his hands. And the next paragraph is, Father had provided for my education and I had been able to realize his dreams. My parents were truly proud of me. It was through me that they had earned a greater degree of admiration and respect from the villagers. My father would not like to see me carrying a trunk on my back and would be very hurt if I did so. I concluded that it would be better to let him carry it. Father was used to carrying luggage anyway. He was stronger and more skilled than me in these matters. I had never got used to physical labor, having stayed in hostels right from my childhood. So in spite of my youth and strength, I was physically useless. So in this paragraph, the author is trying to convince his own self. So he says that he studied in hostel from the beginning, so he never did any kind of physical labor, but father always did physical labor. So father is the right person to carry the trunk box. And though he is very strong, he is in youth, he is physically useless because he never carried any trunk. And that is one point he is convincing himself. And the second thing is, and he says his father and mother got lot of name and fame in the village because of him, because he studied in town and he got an excellent job. Because of his job and status, all the villagers started respecting his father and mother, and that is the reason he says, because of him his father and mother got the respect from all his villagers. So he says even if he really tries to convince his father would not listen to him. His father would never allow him to carry the trunk box because his father really loves him. His father would never give the opportunity of carrying the trunk box to his son. And that is what the author is saying, and he is simply convincing himself, saying that he never carried any trunk box. He never did any physical labor, and father always did it. He never did it. And let's try to see what happened next. The next paragraph is, I continued walking silently with father. We rested at two places on the way and had our tiffins, but we hardly talked. Finally, we reached Dirang. The bus from Tawang had not yet reached Dirang, and so we had some time in hand. We entered a tea shop and sat facing each other. Father appeared tired. I felt sorry for him but could not bring myself to say anything. I asked the waiter to get us 2 cups of tea. Father and the son continued walking and finally reached their destination where they get bus. So finally they reached Dirang where they should catch the bus. So the bus hadn't come. There was some time and both of them went to tea stall. Son looked at his father. Father looked very tired because he carried the trunk box. Son felt very sad about this situation, seeing his father was very tired, but he never said anything to his father. But he ordered 2 cups of tea as there was some time. So son was very sad to see his father was tired, but he never uttered a single word. And let's read more. Just as I was going to take my first sip, I heard father's voice. Do you have a pair of old shoes? Why? I asked. The road is uneven and full of pebbles. It hurts while walking. So the waiter gave them the tea and the son was about to take the first sip of the tea. But before he took the first sip, there was a voice. His father spoke. He asked one thing. What is that? Do you have any old pair of shoes? Father asked it. And the son told, why father? And the father told, the road was not in a good condition and it hurts me while I was walking. And this is a very pathetic situation. Father doesn't even have a good chappal. Even then, he carried the trunk of his own son. And that is the greatness of the father. And let's read the next paragraph and try to understand. I looked at father's bare feet. Never having worn shoes, his feet had developed cracks and somehow resembled those of an elephant. I noticed this for the first time. I hadn't noticed that the road was uneven. I didn't have to, since I was wearing a pair of hunting boots. I checked my wallet and saw I still had around rupees 40 with me. A pair of canvas shoe would cost around rupees 12 and the remaining amount would be enough for me to get to Bomdila. So when his father asked him the old pair of shoes and the road was not good, that was the first time he looked at his father's feet. So when father asked for the old pair of shoes, the son said, why? So father told that the road was not in a good condition. And that was the first time he looked at his father's feet, and feet developed lot of cracks and they seem like they are the feet of elephant. And this is the first time he is looking at the father's feet and he felt very sorry for that. And he looked at his purse, wallet, and there were 40 rupees and the new pair of shoes cost only 12 rupees. And he decided to give 12 rupees to his father and the remaining balance amount is enough for him to continue his journey to reach Bomdila. That is the place where he works. So finally the son decided to give money to his father to buy new shoes. Did the father take it? Let's try to know whether the father took the money or he simply said no. The next paragraph is, my father protested, give me an old pair. You don't have to spend money on new shoes. I couldn't convince him to buy a new pair. Reluctantly, I gave him the hunting boots I was wearing. I then took out my pair of leather shoes from the trunk and noticed my father's face lighting up with contentment. Suddenly he looked at me and said, take care, write to us. Contentment means feeling of happiness and satisfaction. So when the son wanted to give the money to his father, father simply protested. Father very strictly said, I don't want money. Give me the old shoes. Finally, the son gave the shoes that he was wearing, the hunting boots, and the son took out the new shoes which are there already in the trunk box, and he wore it. And before he wore it, he looked at his father's face. Father's face was very bright and it was very happy. His father was very satisfied, and father said, please write to us. There is lot of satisfaction in his face. And father told his son, take care, be careful, and when you reach, you write a letter to us. That is what the father told. And then what happened, let's try to understand in the next paragraph. Father wanted to say something, but the bus started moving. I saw my father gradually receding into the distance. I saw the road we had come by looked like a giant motionless rope. Father would use the same road to go back home. Simultaneously, our journeys started in two opposite directions, with me seated in a luxurious seat of a bus and father walking back with a weary legs on a pebble-strewn road. Weary means very tired. The father wanted to say something to his son, but he said nothing. So finally, the son was sitting luxuriously in the bus, and the bus started moving, and his father started walking back to his own village and on the same road that he came. And the son sitting in the luxurious bus seat looked at the road, and the road was very big, motionless, without moving, and it's very big and with the same pebbles throughout the road. And father started walking on the same road with the tired legs, but son sitting luxuriously in the bus, and the bus started moving. So both of their journeys started. So one sitting luxuriously in the bus and the bus is moving, but the father walking on the same pebble-strewn road, lot of pebbles, with a tired legs, and both of their journeys are entirely different. Father walking with a lot of tiredness, son sitting luxuriously in a bus. So this is the story about a father and the son. So what is the summary of the story? The story is all about a son who came to his village to get married, and after marriage he wanted to go back to his working place, and there was a trunk box to the son, and there were no workers available, and there was a question, who should carry the trunk box? So when this question came up, this educated white collar job son, though physically fit and capable of carrying the trunk box which is of 20 kilos, he doesn't want to carry his own luggage due to some false prestige. Like, he is an educated person, he is doing a white collar job, and what would other people think if he carries the trunk box, and he would be belittled. And these are the false prestiges, because of them he never carried. And finally the father came up with a solution that he would carry the trunk box to the bus stop. So finally father was very happy to carry the trunk box of his own son, though he was very old. But the son was very guilty about his own actions and thoughts and uncertainty and false prestige. So students, what can we learn from the lessons? The first thing, fathers are ready to do any amount of work for the welfare of the sons. And the second thing, fathers take all the risks and give comfort to their sons. And the third thing, fathers take all the blame and give name and fame to their sons. And the fourth thing is, we should respect our father and share in their work in a proper manner. And the fifth thing is, father's love is unconditional and incomparable. So finally we agree that there is no love on the earth that is greater than that of a father's love for his son. So students, look at your father, understand his situation and position and condition, try to help him, and finally do respect and love your father always. All the very best. But before you leave the channel, don't forget to click on the subscription bell and like button so that I can come up with many more better lessons. Thank you very much for watching the entire video.